Your mama's dead, so what? You better serve my guests or you can sleep on the street, my husband laughed, a cold, jagged sound. I served the food with tears streaming down my face. My husband's boss, an older gentleman with a cane, grabbed my wrist. "Why are you crying, and why are you wearing black?" I told him. His face turned to stone. He walked up to my husband and said loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "Everyone knew your wife's mother, except you, apparently. She was my sister. And now, let me tell you what's about to happen to your career, your house, and your sorry excuse for a life." Hello, everyone. Drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. Enjoy the story. But to understand how heavy those words really were, we have to go back 4 hours. Zainab stood in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the kettle as it went cold. The call from the hospital had come exactly at noon. The doctor spoke in a dry, businesslike tone, but Zainab only remembered one word: expired. Her mother, Etta, was gone. For 4 hours, Zainab just sat on a stool, staring at a spot on the wall, until the front door slammed in the hallway. Kyrie was back. He flew into the kitchen, loosening his tie as he walked, and immediately twisted his face in disgust. The stove was empty. No smell of roast duck, no prep work done. "Are you deaf or something?" he barked instead of saying hello. "I called you this morning. Today is the day Thaddeus Vance, my new CEO, is coming over. Whether I become VP or rot in middle management depends on this dinner. Where is the duck? Where are the appetizers?" Zainab looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. She tried to speak firmly, but her voice cracked into a whisper. "Kyrie, Mama's gone. She passed away today at noon." Kyrie froze for a second. He looked at his wife, then at the empty table, and an expression of extreme annoyance crossed his face, as if his car had broken down at an inconvenient time. "Died?" he asked coldly. "Well, we all gotta go sometime. She was over 60, had a weak heart. It was expected." "Expected?" Zainab stood up. "Kyrie, that is my mother. I can't host guests today. Call them, cancel. Tell them we have a death in the family." Kyrie stepped right up to her. He was a head taller and knew how to use his height to intimidate. He grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her hard. "You don't seem to understand," he hissed in her face. "Vance isn't the kind of man you say no to. He's driving all the way across town to see how his potential VP lives. If you start playing the tragedy card and mess this up, I will throw you out right now onto the street." Zainab looked out the window. Beyond the glass, the February wind was howling, sweeping snow against the gray apartment complex. She had no money, no keys to her mother's apartment because she'd left them at the hospital. She had nowhere to go. "You wouldn't do that," she said quietly. "Try me," Kyrie sneered. "This is a corporate apartment leased to the firm. You are nobody here. You have 2 hours. Wash your face, put on some makeup, and make this table look like Thanksgiving, and wipe that miserable look off your face. Guests want a party, not a funeral." Zainab swallowed her tears as she chopped vegetables. Her hands were shaking, the knife slipping, but she kept cooking. Fear of her husband and a habit of submission had eaten into her deeper than she thought over 10 years of marriage. When the duck was in the oven, she went to change. Her hand reached for the bright beige dress Kyrie liked, but her fingers chose something else on their own. A strict, high-necked black dress that hit below the knees. It was her quiet rebellion, the only way to honor her mother's memory in this house of absurdity. Exactly at 7:00 p.m., the doorbell rang. Kyrie threw the door open, spreading a fake, wide smile. "Mr. Vance, what an honor. Please come in." A tall, solemn man of about 65 walked into the entryway. He leaned on a heavy cane with a silver handle. His gaze was sharp, heavy. He looked around the cramped hallway, the cheap wallpaper, and finally rested his eyes on Kyrie. "I hope the dinner is worth dragging myself all this way," he grumbled in a deep bass voice, taking off his coat. "Oh, my wife is a culinary miracle." Kyrie pushed Zainab forward. "Meet my Zainab." Thaddeus Vance nodded at her without smiling. Zainab tried to squeeze out a greeting, but her throat seized up in a spasm. She just bowed her head and quickly retreated to the kitchen. Dinner turned into torture. Kyrie kept cracking jokes, pouring cognac for his boss, and endlessly bragging about his non-existent achievements. Zainab brought out plates, changed silverware. Tears flowed down her cheeks continuously, silently dripping onto the collar of her black dress. Kyrie noticed. When she leaned in to take an empty plate, he kicked her hard on the ankle under the table. Zainab let out a small cry, but immediately covered her mouth with her hand. "What's wrong with you, dear?" Thaddeus asked, looking up from his food. "She's just so clumsy," Kyrie interjected quickly, flashing a vicious glare at his wife. "And too sentimental. She saw a stray kitten this morning, still crying about it. Women, right, Mr. Vance?" The guest didn't answer. He was watching Zainab closely. In his eyes, there wasn't irritation, but a strange, intense curiosity. "More wine, Mr. Vance?" Zainab asked with a trembling voice, picking up the bottle. She approached the guest from the right side. Her hands were shaking so bad that the neck of the bottle clinked against the glass. She reached forward, and at that moment, the wide sleeve of her black dress slid down to her elbow. On her thin, pale wrist, an antique silver locket on a heavy chain gleamed. On the lid of the locket was an intricate engraving, 2 crossed keys, and a phoenix. Thaddeus Vance froze. His hand shot forward with unexpected speed for his age and grabbed Zainab's wrist. The wine bottle slipped from her fingers and smashed on the floor, flooding the linoleum with a red puddle. "What are you doing, you idiot?" Kyrie yelled, jumping up. "That's vintage wine." "Silence!" Thaddeus barked so loud that Kyrie plopped back down into his chair. The old man didn't let go of Zainab's hand. He pulled her closer to the light, peering at the locket. His fingers were trembling. "Where did you get this?" he asked hoarsely. "This crest? Where?" Zainab looked at him in fear. It's Mama's. She gave it to me a long time ago. Told me to keep it safe and never take it off." Thaddeus raised his eyes to hers. Now he was looking at her face as if he were seeing a ghost. He studied the shape of her eyes, the line of her cheekbones. "What was your mother's name?" he asked quietly. Etta Griggs." "And her maiden name?" "I don't know. She never said. She told me she had no family except me." Thaddeus slowly loosened his fingers. He leaned heavily on his cane and stood up with effort. His face, usually flush with authority, had turned gray. "Etta," he whispered. "Etta May. 30 years I've been looking for her. 30 years. He turned to Zainab, and there were tears in his eyes. "Why are you in black, child? Why have you been crying all evening? Answer me." Zainab sobbed, unable to hold it in anymore. "Mama died today, at noon." A deathly silence hung in the room. You could hear the refrigerator humming. Thaddeus closed his eyes, and a single tear rolled down his cheek. Then he opened them, and a storm of rage was raging inside. He slowly turned his head toward Kyrie. Kyrie sat pale, mouth open, shifting his gaze from his boss to his wife. "Mr. Vance, I didn't know you two knew each other. She's just a—" "You forced her." Thaddeus's voice sounded like the rumble of an approaching avalanche. "Her mother died today, my own sister, and you forced her to roast a duck and serve you like a maid." "Sister?" Kyrie squeaked. "But she's just a seamstress." "She was a Vance!" Thaddeus struck the floor with his cane. "She ran away from our tyrant of a father 30 years ago to save her child. To save you, Zainab. She walked away from millions to live in peace. And you?" Thaddeus stepped toward Kyrie. Kyrie pressed himself into the back of his chair. "You are not just fired, Mr. Payton. You are finished. Tomorrow morning, no decent company in this city will even open your resume. I will personally see to it that you are sweeping parking lots for the rest of your days." Kyrie, realizing he had nothing left to lose, suddenly sneered. His face twisted with malice. "Oh, is that right? Well, both of you can go to hell. Just keep in mind, Mr. Vance, you are currently in my apartment. And you, Zainab, too. This is corporate housing provided to me by contract. Since I'm fired, I demand that unauthorized persons vacate the premises. And as for you, wifey, we'll settle this in court. Get out!" Kyrie crossed his arms triumphantly, feeling like he'd gotten the last word. Thaddeus suddenly started laughing. It was a terrifying, dry laugh. He pulled his phone from his pocket, dialed a number, and put it on speaker. "Legal department, this is Vance. Pull up the file on the Peyton apartment. 45 King Drive, Unit 12. Whose books is it on?" The voice on the phone answered clearly and loudly. "Mr. Vance, that real estate is not on the holding company's books. 5 years ago, that building was transferred to the private Vance Family Trust. According to the trust bylaws, direct heirs of the family have ownership rights." Thaddeus hung up and looked at Kyrie, who had started sliding off his chair. "You didn't live here because you're a valuable employee, Peyton. You lived here because my security team has long suspected where Etta might be. And we kept this property just in case. This apartment belongs to the trust, and the sole heir of my sister is right here." Thaddeus pointed his cane at Zainab. "So it's not you kicking us out. It is Zainab who will decide right now if you stay under the roof she owns." Kyrie shifted his gaze to his wife. For the first time in years, genuine animal fear appeared in his eyes. Zainab wiped her tears and took a step forward. "Get out," she said quietly but firmly, pointing at the door. Kyrie backed away, hit his back against the doorframe, and suddenly his face distorted. Fear was replaced by a wild, cornered rage. He lunged sideways, grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the table, and hurled it with all his might at the wall next to Thaddeus's head. Shards flew everywhere. "You're the ones getting out!" he screeched, his voice cracking into a falsetto. "This is my house. I'm registered here. Just try and touch me!" He dashed into the hallway, and before Thaddeus could intercept him with the cane, slammed the heavy metal door right in their faces. One lock clicked, then the second, and the chain rattled. "I'm calling the police!" His muffled scream came from behind the door. "Hello, 911? Get here immediately. 45 King Drive. My wife got drunk, brought some thug over. They're breaking furniture, threatening to kill me. She's having a psychotic episode. She's unstable." Zainab stood on the landing, staring at the closed door of her own apartment. She heard her husband continue to lie hysterically into the phone, describing her non-existent drunkenness and aggression. "We need to break the door down." Thaddeus gripped the handle of his cane until his knuckles turned white. "I'll call my security." "No." Zainab shook her head. She had no strength left to fight. "The police will believe him. He knows how to be convincing. And look at me, crying in a stranger's apartment, on paper. They'll take us to the precinct until they sort it out. I don't want to spend the night of Mama's death in a holding cell." Thaddeus sighed heavily, admitting she was right. He draped his cashmere coat over her shoulders since her things were still inside. "Let's go. You can't stay here." They drove in silence. The city outside the window was drowning in wet snow, turning into blurred spots of light. Thaddeus's car was huge, warm, smelling of expensive leather, but Zainab was shivering with chills. She thought about Mama, about how her body was lying somewhere in a cold morgue, while her daughter was driving into the unknown with a man she was seeing for the first time. Thaddeus's home turned out to be not just a house, but a real estate in a gated community in the suburbs. Inside, it was quiet and empty. He led her into a massive living room where logs were already crackling in the fireplace and poured hot tea. "Why did she run?" Zainab asked, staring at the fire. "If you all are so rich, why did we live counting pennies?" Thaddeus sat in the armchair opposite. He looked like a tired old man, the mask of the formidable boss having slipped off. "Our father was a terrible man, Zainab. He built an empire on bones. To him, people were resources, and family was an asset. He wanted to marry Etta off to a partner's son, a cruel and depraved man, to seal a merger deal. Etta begged him not to do it, but Father said, 'You will do what benefits the family.'" Thaddeus rubbed his face with his palms. That night she vanished, took only a small bag and that locket. She changed her name, her documents, cut all ties. I looked for her, hired detectives, checked databases. But she was smart. She knew how to hide. She chose poverty over a golden cage. She was afraid father would find her and take you away, or that I would become just like him. And did you? Zainab asked quietly. I tried not to be, he answered hollowly, but business requires hardness. Now that I've found you, everything I have is yours. Money, connections, lawyers. We will crush your husband. We will get the apartment back. You will want for nothing. Zainab set the cup on the table. The clink of porcelain sounded too loud. I don't want your money, Mr. Vance, and I don't need revenge right now. I want only one thing, to bury Mama, with dignity, and then I'll decide how to live. The next 2 days passed in a fog. Thaddeus took on all expenses. He organized the service at the best funeral home in the city. Zainab barely slept, dealing with documents, choosing the casket, the wreaths. Kyrie didn't show up. He barricaded himself in the apartment, didn't answer calls, and seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth. The day of the funeral was gray and windy. Not many people gathered at the cemetery, a few neighbors, a couple of Mama's former colleagues from the sewing factory. Zainab stood by the casket, looking at her mother's peaceful face. She seemed so small amidst the white satin. The pastor began to read a prayer. Zainab closed her eyes, listening to the monotone chant, when the cemetery silence was broken by the screech of brakes. A black SUV pulled up to the gates. Kyrie stepped out. He was clean-shaven, wearing an expensive suit he'd bought with money Zainab had saved for a vacation. Next to him scurried a frail little man with a leather briefcase tucked under his arm, a lawyer. Kyrie didn't look like he was grieving. He walked toward the grave with the confident stride of an owner. "Stop the ceremony!" he shouted loudly. People turned around. The pastor fell silent. Thaddeus stepped forward, blocking his path. "You dare show your face here?" he growled. "Get out before I order security to bury you in the next plot." "Easy there, Uncle," Kyrie smirked. "We're operating within the law." The lawyer immediately popped out from behind his back and opened a folder. "My client, Mr. Kyrie Payton, is the legal spouse of Zainab Griggs Payton. According to state statutes, he has equal rights in decision-making. But that is not the main point." The lawyer pulled out a paper with a notary seal. 3 years ago, Ms. Etta Griggs signed a general power of attorney to her son-in-law, granting him the right to manage all property and represent her interests in all matters, including burial arrangements. The POA is valid for another 2 years. Zainab stared at the paper, and her legs went weak. She remembered. 3 years ago, Kyrie wanted to get a car loan, but his credit was shot. He asked to put the car in her mom's name, drove them to a notary, and slid a stack of papers in front of them. "Just formalities for the bank. Sign here and here, babe. We're late," she had signed without looking. "So what?" Thaddeus looked at the document with disdain. "This doesn't give him the right to disrupt a funeral." "It does," Kyrie interjected, adjusting his tie. "As my wife's mother's legal representative, I contest the burial site. I believe this cemetery is too expensive and inconvenient. I demand the process be halted and the body transferred to the city morgue until the dispute is settled." A murmur of horror went through the crowd. "You monster," Zainab whispered. "You want to take Mama's body? Why?" Kyrie walked right up to her. He smelled of expensive cologne and cognac. "It's very simple, Zainab," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "You are going to sign a deed of gift for your Mama's old plot of land out in Oakwood Heights, right here, on the hood of my lawyer's car, and we continue the funeral. You refuse, and your mother sits in a morgue cooler for another month while we sue each other." Zainab looked at him and didn't recognize him. This wasn't just a selfish man, this was an enemy. "The land?" she asked, confused. "That overgrown lot with the shack? It's just rotting wood and weeds. Why do you want it? It's worth nothing." Kyrie smiled smugly. "That's none of your business. Maybe I want to grow tomatoes. So, what's it going to be? You signing, or is Mama going back into the cold?" Thaddeus, standing nearby, suddenly frowned. He whipped out his phone and quickly typed something. "Oakwood Heights, Lot 34, he muttered, looking at a cadastral map. His face changed. He looked up at Kyrie, and in his eyes there wasn't just contempt, but an understanding of the scale of the villainy. "Ah, you little vulture," Thaddeus drawled. "What is it?" Zainab asked. Thaddeus turned the phone screen to her. "Zainab, he isn't planning to grow tomatoes. Yesterday, the governor signed the final plan for the new federal interstate expansion. It goes right through Oakwood Heights." Zainab still didn't understand. She looked at her husband, whose cheek had started to twitch nervously. "So?" "So," Thaddeus said harshly, staring Kyrie in the eyes. "The state is buying out these lots under eminent domain, but not for the price of a shack. The land in this zone has been rezoned for commercial use. The compensation for your lot, Zainab, will be around $1.2 million. The crowd gasped. Zainab shifted her gaze to Kyrie. He knew. He had known for months. He didn't just want a garden. He wanted to steal over $1 million from her, blackmailing her with her dead mother's body. "You knew," Zainab exhaled. It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. Kyrie stepped back. Red blotches covered his face. The mask of the confident master of life cracked. "So what?" he snapped. "We're family. It's community money. Sign it, or I swear this coffin goes back to the city right now." "It's going nowhere," came Thaddeus's calm voice. He didn't shout. He just made a hand signal, and two sturdy men in black overcoats who had been standing by the cars silently approached Kyrie and his lawyer. "Your document is worthless trash," Thaddeus said to the frail lawyer. "A power of attorney can be revoked in a split second. Zainab, say it." Zainab straightened up. For the first time in days, she felt not pain, but a cold, ringing rage. "I revoke the power of attorney right now in front of witnesses." Kyrie's lawyer turned pale and snapped his folder shut. "In that case, we have no legal grounds to interfere. Mr. Payton, we'd better go." "What?" Kyrie screeched. "Who are you listening to? I pay you. Do something!" But Thaddeus's guards had already gently but firmly taken them by the elbows. "The service continues," Thaddeus announced loudly to the pastor. "And these gentlemen, please escort them to the gate." Kyrie tried to break free, shouting curses, yelling that he would sue everyone, but his voice was drowned out by the wind. A minute later, the black SUV peeled out and disappeared around the bend. The funeral proceeded peacefully. When the casket was lowered into the frozen earth, Zainab threw the first handful of dirt. With every thud of soil on the lid, something inside her died. The old Zainab, who was afraid to look her husband in the eye, who endured humiliation to save the family, stayed down there. "Let's go," she said to Thaddeus when it was over. "Where? To my place?" he asked. "No, home. To the apartment. I want to throw his things out right now." Together with Thaddeus and his security, they went up to the 5th floor. The door was unlocked. The lock was broken, as if someone had kicked it out from the inside in a hurry or tried to break in. Zainab pushed the door and froze on the threshold. The apartment was no more. Or rather, it was no longer a home. It was a battlefield. Furniture overturned, wallpaper in the hallway torn in strips. Shards of dishes, clothes, books lay on the floor. The TV was gone, the laptop too. Kyrie had taken everything of any value, even the microwave. "Lord," Zainab whispered, stepping over a pile of laundry dumped out of the closet. "He was looking for cash or documents," Thaddeus stated, surveying the destruction. "Or he just wanted to hurt you." Zainab walked into the kitchen. There, amidst the chaos, on the only surviving table, lay a thick folder. Written on it in black marker was, "To my beloved wife." Zainab's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were not letters or photos. They were letters from banks and loan sharks. CashNet USA, Speedy Cash, check cashing places. Dozens of logos that made her eyes blur. "What is this?" she asked, shuffling through the papers. Thaddeus took a sheet, scanned it. His eyebrows shot up. These are notices of overdue debt, pre-legal notifications, collection demands. But we didn't have loans, Zainab muttered confusedly. Kyrie said we lived within our means. Look at the borrower's name, Zainab. She lowered her gaze. In the borrower line everywhere was the same name, Zainab Griggs Payton. How? She dropped the folder, papers scattered across the floor. I didn't take anything. I haven't been to a bank in 5 years since I changed my card. The power of attorney, Thaddeus said grimly. The same one you revoked today. He used it not only to blackmail you with the funeral. He's been taking out loans in your name for years. Thaddeus took out his phone and called his lawyer. Half an hour later, they were sitting in the wrecked living room while the lawyer, having access to the databases via tablet, dictated the terrifying numbers. Total debt amount, $150,000, not counting late fees and penalties. Loans were taken out over the last 3 years. First from major banks, then, when the credit score tanked, from predatory lenders at insane interest rates. Zainab sat with her head in her hands, $150,000. She, a seamstress making $30,000 a year, owed $150,000. Where? She whispered. Where did he put this money? We didn't buy anything. I wore the same old coat. We ate pasta. He said he was saving for a condo. At that moment, her phone, lying on the table, rang. An unknown number. Zainab pressed answer. Ms. Griggs Payton? A rough male voice. Debt Recovery Agency. Your husband, Kyrie Payton, listed your number as a contact. He's hiding, but the debt is on you. When do you plan to settle? We have information about your place of employment. We'll come by there tomorrow, and we'll visit the neighbors. Zainab hung up. The phone immediately rang again. Another number, then another. The attack had begun. Kyrie hadn't just run away. He had thrown her into a pit of vipers. I'll cover it all, Thaddeus said firmly. My lawyers will contact all creditors tomorrow. We'll pay off the debts. To me, this amount is negligible. Zainab looked up at him. There were tears in her eyes, but her gaze was hard. No. Zainab, don't be foolish. They will eat you alive. You don't have that kind of money. If you pay, I stay the same fool everyone decides for, she said, standing up. First a husband, now an uncle. I've been a victim my whole life, Mr. Vance. I signed without looking. I endured. I believed. Enough. She walked to the window. The wind flapped a torn curtain. I need to understand where the money went. I need to find him. This is my business. Thaddeus looked at her with respect. All right, then let's look at the statements. The lawyer had already accessed the account activity. The lawyer turned the tablet toward them. Rows of transactions scrolled on the screen. Look, cash withdrawals were rare, mostly transfers. Regular large sums, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, all to the same account. Who? Zainab asked. Recipient, Lachey Williams. Zainab frowned. The name seemed vaguely familiar. Lachey. Lachey, that's his secretary, she remembered. He said she was just an assistant. A gray mouse, as he put it. The lawyer quickly typed the name into a search engine. Well, regarding Gray Mouse, I'd argue that, he chuckled. He opened a social media page. Looking back at them from the screen was a glamorous woman in furs, posing in front of the Eiffel Tower, expensive restaurants and beauty salons. Lachey's Luxe Bar, the lawyer read. Elite beauty salon downtown, opened 2 years ago. Owner, Lachey Williams. Thaddeus whistled. That's where your $150,000 went, Zainab. Your husband wasn't gambling. He was building a business for his mistress. With your money. Zainab stared at the photo. On one of the shots, taken at the salon opening, Lachey was cutting a red ribbon, and in the background, in the shadows with a glass of champagne, stood Kyrie. He was smiling like he never smiled at home, happily and proudly. She zoomed in on the photo. Lachey was wearing a necklace, the very same one Kyrie claimed he was saving for, showing Zainab pictures in magazines and promising to get it for their anniversary. Sorry, babe. Prices went up. Couldn't do it, he had said then. Rage, cold and calculating, finally displaced the fear. Zainab took the tablet and checked the salon's address. 10 Peachtree Street, she read. What are you going to do? Thaddeus asked. Zainab walked to the mirror in the hallway. It was cracked, but she saw her reflection. Pale face, black dress, hard eyes. I'm going there. I want to look into this business lady's eyes. I'm taking back what belongs to me. She turned to Thaddeus. Mr. Vance, I need your help. Not money. I need a good auditor, right now. We're going to this salon not to cause a scene. We're going to conduct an inspection of my investments. The auditor arrived in an hour. It was a strict woman in glasses with a folder of documents. Together with Thaddeus and his security, they headed downtown. Lachey's Luxe Bar shone with glass display windows, marble, gold leaf, huge chandeliers. Everything screamed of luxury paid for by Zainab's tears. She pushed the heavy glass door and walked in. The receptionist, seeing 2 security guards, turned pale and reached for the panic button, but Thaddeus shook his head. I wouldn't advise it, he said calmly. We're here for the owner. Lachey came out of her office a minute later. She was even more striking than in the photos. Tall, well-groomed, in a silk dress that clung to her. Zainab froze. Lachey's belly was noticeably round, 5 months along at least. Lachey looked Zainab over with a contemptuous gaze from head to toe, lingering on her simple black dress. Ah, the legal wife, she smirked, showing not a drop of fear. I thought you'd come sooner. Kyrie said you were slow. Where is he? Zainab asked, trying to keep her voice steady. No idea. Lachey shrugged and walked to a velvet sofa, sinking heavily onto it. The coward ran off, left me to clean up his mess. But it's fine. The baby and I will manage. She expressively rubbed her belly. Is that Kyrie's child? Zainab asked hollowly. Of course. We're a real family, Zainab. Not like you two, strangers in one apartment. Kyrie loved me and you. He just used you. Zainab stepped forward. This salon was bought with my money, with loans he took out in my name. I'm taking everything. Lachey laughed, a loud, biting laugh. You're taking nothing, Mouse. Look at you. You're nobody. And I have the best lawyers. And do you know what we have on you? She pulled a folder from a desk drawer and tossed it in front of Zainab. Open it. Zainab opened it. It was a photo of her, disheveled, face red, screaming, waving a knife in the kitchen. It was 6 months ago. Kyrie had driven her to hysterics with his nitpicking. She was cutting meat. He started yelling. She turned with the knife in her hand, crying. Turns out he was filming. Wife in a state of affect threatens to kill husband, Lachey commented. And there's a video where you're sleeping on the floor after taking sedatives, bottles all around. Kyrie set it all up. We'll prove you're mentally unstable, an alcoholic, and a danger to society. You'll be declared incompetent, and Kyrie will be appointed your guardian, which means all your rich uncle's inheritance. She nodded at Thaddeus. Haas will be under our control. Thaddeus stepped forward, his face darkened with anger. Do you realize who you are talking to, girl? He growled. A has-been tycoon who couldn't find his sister for 30 years, Lachey snorted. Your time is up, old man. It's the era of the young and bold. Get out of my salon, or I call the police, and show them these photos right now. Zainab felt her strength leaving her. They had planned everything, every humiliation, every tantrum. It was all part of the plan. She silently turned around and walked out to the street. Thaddeus caught up with her, trying to say something, to comfort her, promising to destroy Lachey in court. But Zainab didn't hear. She needed a place where she could breathe. Take me to Mama's, she asked, to her apartment. Thaddeus drove her. He wanted to go up with her, but she asked to be left alone. She needed to say goodbye. Etta's apartment met her with silence and the smell of medicine. Everything was just as it was when Mama was alive. The old sofa, the rug on the wall, the Singer sewing machine by the window. Zainab ran her hand along the back of a chair. Mama sat here in the evenings, sewing orders to help her and Kyrie with money, even though she lived hand-to-mouth herself. Zainab began to pack things, clothes into bags to give to the church, books into boxes. She opened the closet and saw the old dressmaker's mannequin covered in worn fabric. Mama called her Miss Hattie. She modeled her best dresses on it. Zainab hugged the mannequin, pressing her cheek against the cold fabric, and wept. Tears flowed like a river, washing away the remnants of her self-control. Suddenly, her fingers felt something hard under the fabric of the mannequin near the neck. There was a seam, but it had come undone. Zainab pulled at the thread. Hidden inside the stuffing was a small bundle. She pulled it out. It was a thick notebook with an oilcloth cover. A diary. Zainab sat on the floor right amidst the boxes and opened the first page. Mama's handwriting was even, neat. January 15th. Kyrie came by today asking for money again. Said Zainab has problems at work, needs to pay a fine. I gave the last $200. Don't tell Zainab, he asked. She'll be upset. Zainab turned the page. February 20th. Kyrie brought groceries. Strange, he never did that. Then started talking about the land. Says, sell it, everything's rotting there anyway. I said, no, it's a memory of Zainab's father. We met there. March 10th. Kyrie was yelling. He was scary. Said I'm a stupid old woman sitting on a pot of gold. I didn't understand what he meant. My heart seized up. He didn't even hand me water, left slamming the door. Zainab read, and the chill of horror shackled her body. Kyrie came here regularly. He had been tormenting Mama for months. He pressured her while Zainab thought he was working late. She opened the last entry. The date was the day before Mama died. The handwriting was uneven, shaky. Letters jumped as if Mama wrote in a hurry or felt very ill. April 12th. He was here again. Brought me new heart pills. Said he bought imported ones, expensive, because he cares. I took one in front of him. I felt sick, dizzy, chest burned like fire. He watched and smiled so strangely, like a wolf. When he went to the bathroom, I looked at the bottle. The label was re-glued, crooked. I saw him pouring something in the kitchen while I looked for my glasses. Lord, he wants to kill me. I'm scared to call Zainab. He said if I make a peep, something will happen to her. If I die, daughter, know this wasn't my heart. Check the blue bottle in the medicine cabinet. He switched the pills. Zainab dropped the diary. A scream got stuck in her throat. This wasn't just theft, not just adultery, not just fraud. This was murder. Kyrie poisoned her mother. He systematically, cold-bloodedly killed a human being to get hold of land for a highway construction. Zainab jumped to her feet and rushed to the bathroom. The medicine cabinet hung over the sink. She threw the door open. Medicines stood in rows, heart drops, bandages. She feverishly went through the bottles. The blue bottle was gone, empty. On the shelf remained only a round dust ring where it had stood. Someone had been here after Mama died. Someone took the evidence. Zainab looked in the mirror. From the depths of the glass, not a victim looked back, not a tear-stained widow. Looking back was a daughter who had just learned she lived under the same roof as her mother's killer. And this killer was somewhere free right now, planning to declare her insane and take everything else. You won't get anything, she whispered to her reflection. I will put you away, even if I have to dig up the earth with my bare hands. She grabbed the diary, shoved it into her bag, and ran out of the apartment. She needed Thaddeus. Now this wasn't just a family drama, it was war. Zainab ran out of the building, clutching the bag with the diary until her knuckles turned white. Thaddeus was waiting in the car. Seeing her face, he immediately knew something terrible had happened. To the police! She threw out, slamming the door. Urgent! He killed her! The whole way, she read Thaddeus the entries from the diary. His face turned to stone with every line. At the police precinct, they were met coldly. The duty detective, a young guy with tired eyes, twirled the old notebook in his hands. Ma'am, these are just notes, he sighed. Elderly woman, bad heart, imagination. Where is the proof? Where is this blue bottle of yours? It's gone, Zainab almost screamed. He took it. He was there. Who? My husband. The detective smirked. Any witnesses? Cameras? No. The body is already buried. The autopsy showed heart failure, which for her age and diagnosis is normal. To open a murder case and exhume, we need solid evidence, not a diary. Maybe she mixed up the pills herself? Or you, forgive me, are making this up on nerves to get back at a cheating husband. Zainab walked out of the office feeling helplessness squeezing her throat. The law was blind, and Kyrie was acting. That same evening, Thaddeus turned on the TV in the living room of his mansion. A talk show, City Speaks, was on the local channel. In the studio, on a soft couch, sat Kyrie. He looked perfect. Modest black suit, tragic expression, slightly red eyes. "I just want my wife back," he said with a trembling voice, looking straight into the camera. "We lived 10 happy years, and then this rich relative appeared. He turned her head with money, took her away, hid her in his castle. Zainab isn't herself right now. She's under the influence. She didn't even let me into her mother's funeral, can you imagine? Didn't let me say goodbye to my beloved mother-in-law." The host nodded sympathetically. "And is it true you were kicked out of your own home?" "True." Kyrie wiped a non-existent tear. "I'm staying with friends right now, but I won't give up. I love Zainab. I will save her from that golden cage." And then a special guest was invited to the studio. Out walked Ms. Bernice, Kyrie's mother, a small, withered woman in a headscarf. She started sobbing from the first second. "My son is a saint," she wailed. "He worked 2 jobs for Zainab, and she's ungrateful. Drove her mother to the grave with her indifference, and now wants to leave my husband penniless. Good people, don't believe her. It's all that cursed money." Zainab watched the screen and felt cold hatred boiling inside. Ms. Bernice, the mother-in-law, who for years nagged her about every speck of dust, who came to their home with her own key and rearranged pots. "Stop. Key." Zainab froze. Ms. Bernice had a key to their apartment. But did she have a key to Etta's apartment? She remembered one episode. A year ago, Mama ended up in the hospital, and Zainab asked her mother-in-law to water the plants while she stayed at the hospital. She gave her the key ring, and Ms. Bernice returned them only a week later. "I forgot to give them back, honey. Got lost in my purse," she said then, with a sweet smile. What if she made a duplicate? What if she took the bottle? Kyrie is a coward. He might have been scared to go back to the crime scene, knowing Zainab might be there. But his mother? His mother would do anything for her baby boy. "I need to meet her," Zainab said, turning off the TV. "With who? With that actress?" Thaddeus was surprised. "Yes. She knows more than she's saying, and she's greedy." The next day, Zainab called her mother-in-law. Ms. Bernice's voice on the phone dripped with poison. "What do you want, Judas? Conscience woke up?" "Ms. Bernice, I want peace," Zainab said firmly. "I saw the show. I'm tired of fighting. I have a proposal regarding the inheritance. I'm willing to give Kyrie part of the land money if you stop this circus in the press." A pause hung on the line. Greed battled with hatred. "Come to my place," the old woman grumbled. "Kyrie isn't here. He's meeting with lawyers. We'll talk." Zainab went alone. Thaddeus was against it, but she insisted. She hid her phone with the voice recorder on in the inside pocket of her coat. Miss Bernice's apartment smelled of peppermint oil and old dust. She met Zainab in a robe with a shawl carelessly thrown over it. She led Zainab to the kitchen without even offering tea. "Well?" She sat at the table, crossing her arms. "How much you giving?" "5 million, Zainab lied, referring to a smaller portion of the assumed inheritance. "But I need guarantees." The old woman's eyes glinted greedily. "5, too little. The land is worth way more. Kyrie gets 5 or nothing. I can drag the courts out for years." Ms. Bernice chuckled. "Fine. What do you want?" "I want to know the truth." Zainab leaned forward. "About the pills." The mother-in-law's face didn't twitch. She was a tough cookie. "What pills? You're delusional, honey, just like your mama before she died." "I know Kyrie switched them," Zainab bluffed. I know you took the bottle. I have video from the hallway camera. You entered Mama's apartment the day after she died." It was a lie. There were no cameras in Mama's hallway, but Zainab prayed fear would work. Ms. Bernice turned pale. Her eyes darted around. She clutched her heart. This time, it seemed real. You're lying. There ain't no cameras there." "There are. The neighbor installed a peephole camera. I have the video. If I take it to the police along with Mama's diary, Kyrie goes down for murder. And you, as an accomplice, for destroying evidence." The mother-in-law started shaking. "I didn't know anything," she squealed. "He just asked me to stop by, pick up something. Said the medicine was expensive, shame to throw it out. I didn't know what he did. I just took the bag and threw it in the trash." "Threw it out?" Zainab's heart dropped. The evidence was destroyed. "Yes, in the dumpster by the house." "How was I to know?" She started sobbing. "He's my son. He said it was for business, that you wanted to ruin him." Zainab realized there would be no confession to murder. The old woman would claim ignorance. But she needed something she could hit Kyrie with, something that would destroy his alliance with Lachey. "Fine," Zainab said, changing tactics. "Let's say I believe you. But tell me one thing. Why does he need all this? He has Lachey now, a baby on the way, a new family." And here Ms. Bernice's face twisted. The malice she had been hoarding suddenly found an outlet. She hated Lachey even more than Zainab. "Family," she snorted. "What family? That painted hussy? She's milking him like a cow." "The baby." "Pfft, what's wrong with the baby?" Zainab asked, alert. The mother-in-law suddenly went silent. She realized she'd said too much, but Zainab had already latched onto that thread. "Ms. Bernice, if you stay silent now, I go to the police with the video. Kyrie goes to jail, and Lachey takes all his money, the money he stole from me, and lives happily ever after with another man. Is that what you want? Your son rotting in prison while that girl lives large?" It was a hit to the sorest spot, a mother's jealousy of her son's mistress. "She's lying to him," Ms. Bernice whispered viciously. "Lying to his face." "About what?" "About the baby. It ain't his baby." Zainab froze. "How do you know?" Ms. Bernice stood up, went to an old cabinet, and pulled a yellowed medical file from the back. "Kyrie got sick as a child. Bad. Mumps with complications. Doctors back then said, 'He will never have children.' I didn't tell him. Why upset the boy? Thought maybe a miracle would happen. But when that tramp showed up with a belly after knowing him 2 months, I knew right away. She got knocked up by someone else and is hanging noodles on Kyrie's ears, so he'll open salons for her." Zainab stared at the file in her mother-in-law's hands. This was a bomb. Kyrie didn't know he was sterile. For the sake of an heir, he robbed his wife, killed his mother-in-law, destroyed his life, and the heir was a stranger's. "Give me the file," Zainab said. "Why?" The old woman pressed the folder to her chest. "To save your son from that scammer. You want to open his eyes, don't you?" Ms. Bernice hesitated for a second. Then a vengeful smile distorted her face. She handed the file to Zainab. "Take it. Let him know what kind of snake he warmed up. Only, about the video. You'll delete it, right?" "Of course." Zainab nodded, hiding the file in her bag next to the phone that had recorded every word. "As soon as we're done with Lachey." She left the mother-in-law's apartment. Her legs were shaking, but her soul felt a strange, angry triumph. There was no evidence for murder yet, but she held a weapon capable of blowing up their happy family from the inside. And when they start tearing each other apart, the truth will float to the surface. The next morning, Zainab called Kyrie. "I'm ready to negotiate," she said dryly. "Enough of the show. Meet me at noon in the conference room of the Plaza Hotel. Bring Lachey. This concerns her too." "Oh, giving up?" Kyrie's voice was smug. "Realized you're nothing without me? Fine, we'll be there. Get your uncle's checkbook ready." The plaza was neutral territory. Thaddeus rented a small meeting room. He sat at the head of the table, grim and silent as a rock. Zainab was at his right hand. Only a thin folder lay before her, Exactly at noon, the door swung open. Kyrie walked in, shining like a polished penny, and behind him, clicking her heels, floated Lachey. She wore a white dress emphasizing her belly, and a fur coat, clearly bought recently. They sat opposite, demonstratively holding hands. "Well, relatives?" Kyrie started, lounging in the chair. "Let's get straight to business. My terms are simple. 50% of Vance's company shares go to me, plus compensation for emotional distress, $20 million. And so be it. I give Zainab a divorce and forget about the apartment." Thaddeus didn't even blink. He slowly shifted his gaze to Zainab. "Your turn," he said quietly. Zainab picked up the folder. Her hands weren't shaking. Fear was gone. Only cold contempt remained. "Kyrie, do you really think you are in a position to set terms?" she asked. "Me? Of course." He laughed. "I hold all the aces. Public opinion. Videos of your tantrums. A pregnant wife. By the way, meet the future heir." He nodded at Lachey's belly. "That's my son, what you couldn't give me." Lachey rubbed her belly and smiled her predatory smile. "Yes, Zainab, we're having a boy, a real Peyton." Zainab silently opened the folder, took out a single sheet, a copy of the doctor's conclusion from Kyrie's childhood file. An old yellowed form with a blue stamp from the clinic. She slid the paper across the polished table. It glided over the varnish and stopped right in front of Kyrie. "What is this?" He frowned, reluctantly picking up the sheet. "Read," Zainab said. "Diagnosis: epidemic parotitis complicated by bilateral orchitis. Urologist's conclusion: complete azoospermia, irreversible infertility." Silence hung in the room. You could hear the air conditioner working. Kyrie read. His lips moved. He reread the lines over and over, as if they were written in a foreign language. This is nonsense," he whispered, raising completely white eyes to Zainab. "This is a fake. Mama never—" "Mama knew," Zainab interrupted. "She hid it from you for 30 years so as not to traumatize her beloved son. But yesterday, she gave me the file." Kyrie slowly turned his head toward Lachey. She sat frozen like a wax doll. The smile slid off her face, leaving a mask of horror. "You knew?" Kyrie asked. His voice was quiet, terrifying. "Kyrie, it's a mistake," Lachey babbled, scooting away from him. "Doctors make mistakes. Medicine is different now." "I'm sterile," he screamed, jumping up and slamming his fist on the table so hard the water pitcher jumped. "Since childhood, I can't have kids. Whose bastard is that?" He grabbed Lachey by the shoulder. She shrieked, "Whose? Talk!" "Let go! You're hurting me!" she screamed, trying to break free. "Fine. Not yours. Not yours. Happy? You're a broke loser anyway. Where would you get money for a baby?" Kyrie recoiled as if slapped. I did everything for you. I took out loans. I opened a salon for you. I even—" He cut himself off. Lachey, realizing there was nothing left to lose, went on the offensive. Her face twisted into a grimace of hatred. "What did you do? Hung loans on your wife, hero, but you're a zero yourself. I thought you'd get an inheritance. Thought you were smart. But you're just a pathetic, henpecked man who can't even kill properly." It became so quiet in the room that the air seemed to ring. Thaddeus leaned forward. "What did you say?" he asked in an icy tone. Kyrie paled even more. "Shut up!" he hissed at Lachey. "Shut up! Right now!" But Lachey couldn't be stopped. Hysteria mixed with disappointment and fear of being left with nothing broke the dam. "Why should I shut up?" she screeched, poking a finger at Kyrie. "You promised me mountains of gold. Wait till the old hag dies. We'll sell the land, we'll live it up. And now what? I'm pregnant? No money. The salon gets seized for your debts, and for what did I put up with your slobbering?" "Where is the blue bottle?" Zainab asked loudly, standing up. Kyrie jerked toward Lachey, trying to cover her mouth with his hand, but Thaddeus was already there. He intercepted Kyrie's arm and forcefully twisted it behind his back. Kyrie howled and slammed face first into the table. "Talk!" Thaddeus barked at Lachey. "Where's the proof? Or will you go down as an accomplice in a group murder? You'll have to give birth in prison." Lachey started shaking. All her arrogance vanished. She was just a scared, greedy girl who played too hard. I didn't kill anyone. It was him. He thought of everything." "Where are the pills?" Zainab pressed. "Ms. Bernice said she threw them away." "Is that true?" "No," Lachey shouted. "She's lying. They're all lying. Kyrie didn't throw them away. He's paranoid. He kept them to blackmail the pharmacist." "What pharmacist?" Thaddeus asked. Kyrie wheezed under his hand. "Shut up, you fool! I'll kill the pharmacist who sold him that poison without a prescription." Lachey was selling everyone out to save her own skin. He hid the bottle in the garage inside an old winter tire. He said, "If that old geezer tries to turn me in, I'll show the bottle with his prints." "Who sold him the medicine?" Zainab walked right up to Lachey. "Name?" Lachey sobbed. "Uncle Elroy. Elroy Jenkins." Zainab froze. Uncle Elroy. Ms. Bernice's own brother, Kyrie's uncle. "He works as a pharmacist at the pharmacy on King Drive," Lachey continued, smearing mascara down her cheeks. "Kyrie went to him, said his mother-in-law needed strong pills but had no script. Uncle Elroy gave them. He knew it was the wrong medicine. He knew if mixed with her regular pills, her heart would stop." Zainab felt the floor drop out from under her feet. This wasn't just a tyrant husband. It was a family enterprise. Mother, son, and uncle. A whole clan that conspired to kill her mother for a piece of land. "Kyrie promised Uncle Elroy money," Lachey babbled. $5,000 for the vitamins." Thaddeus jerked Kyrie up from the chair. "Your uncle, you say?" He growled in his face. "Family business." Kyrie was silent. His eyes darted like a cornered rat. "Call the chief of police," Thaddeus told Zainab, "and tell them to send a squad to the North Side Garage Co-op. We're going for winter tires." Lachey collapsed onto the chair and covered her face with her hands. "And me?" she whined. "Nothing happens to me, right? I told everything." Zainab looked at her, at that expensive manicure, at the belly where a stranger's child grew, having become a bargaining chip in this dirty game. "Pray the baby is born healthy," she said. "He's already unlucky with a mother." They walked out of the hall, dragging Kyrie. He didn't resist. He was broken not by the arrest, nor the exposure, but by the fact that his heir, for whom he committed murder, turned out to be a phantom. His male ego was destroyed, and that hurt more than handcuffs. But for Zainab, everything was just beginning. Now she had to find the bottle and look Uncle Elroy in the eye. The task force worked lightning fast. Thaddeus pulled all his old strings, and within an hour, the pharmacy on King Drive was cordoned off. Elroy Jenkins, Uncle Elroy, was taken right behind the counter. He didn't even have time to take off his white coat. During the search in the back room, they found not only unaccounted drugs, but a black ledger. There, among entries about selling codeine syrup to junkies, was one line: KP, special order, $5,000. Deposit, date matched, initials too. But while the police were filling out protocols and driving to the garage for that very bottle, Kyrie disappeared. In the chaos, when he was being let out of the hotel under a promise not to leave town, the investigator didn't have an arrest warrant in hand yet, only Lachey's testimony which needed verifying. He managed to bolt. He asked to use the bathroom, climbed out through a narrow window into the back alley, and dissolved into the city. 2 hours later, a notification from the bank came to Zainab's phone. Withdrawal of funds, $3,500. Balance, $0. It was the last money, the remainder of Mama's savings, which Zainab had transferred to a safe account, access to which, as it turned out, Kyrie also had through hacked online banking. He cleaned out everything, she told Thaddeus, looking at the screen. "I don't have a dime, not even for bread." "That's not a problem." Thaddeus was already pulling out his wallet. "I'll give you whatever you need, and you're coming to stay with me. The apartment isn't safe. He's free." "No," Zainab cut him off. She stood in the wind by the pharmacy building, wrapping herself in her thin coat. "I won't go to your mansion, Mr. Vance. I won't hide. That is my apartment, my life. If I run now, he wins. He'll think I'm afraid." "You should be afraid," Thaddeus raised his voice. "He's a cornered beast." "So am I," she answered quietly, "and I have teeth too." She returned to the trashed apartment. It was freezing. Kyrie, leaving either in a fit of rage or to force her out, had shut off the valves on the radiators and broken them so they couldn't be opened without tools. Outside it was 4 degrees Fahrenheit, inside barely 40. Zainab didn't cry. Tears ran out. She put on 2 sweaters, wool socks, lit the gas stove in the kitchen to get at least a little warm. She took Mama's diary out of her bag, but not to read about the pills. She opened it from the back, where the sketches were. Mama drew dresses, not the dreary robes she sewed to order for neighbors. She drew real beauty, flowing silhouettes, strict lines, unusual collars. "Collection for my Zainab" was written in the margins. Zainab walked to the sewing machine. The old singer was the only thing Kyrie couldn't carry away. Too heavy. Fabrics. There were no fabrics. Kyrie had hauled out all the stocks of expensive silk and wool Mama had saved for years. Zainab looked around. In the corner lay the old curtains Kyrie had torn down. Thick, heavy velvet the color of dark wine. On the floor, his discarded shirt of good cotton. "Fine," she said aloud. "We'll sew from what we have, from the wreckage." She sat at the machine. Her hands remembered the movements. The scissors cut the fabric with a predatory crunch. She cut not by rules, but by instinct. The curtain turned into a complex skirt, the husband's shirt into a corset with stiff inserts. She sewed all night. The cold bit her fingers, but she didn't stop. This was her therapy, her revenge. Every stitch was like a nail in the coffin of their marriage. By morning, the dress was ready. It was strange, gothic, but insanely beautiful. A phoenix dress rising from ashes and dirt. Zainab put it on, let her hair down, stood before the cracked mirror, turned on the camera on her phone, and started a live stream on social media. She had few followers, a couple dozen acquaintances, but she titled the stream, "How My Husband Stole $150K from Me, Killed My Mother, and Left Me to Freeze. My Confession." "Hi," she said into the camera. "My name is Zainab, and this dress is sewn from curtains my husband tore down when he trashed our apartment." She started telling the story, calmly, without hysterics. She showed the apartment, the ripped-out outlets, the icy radiators, the empty fridge. She showed Mama's sketches. "He thought he would break me by taking the money, but he didn't know my inheritance is poverty. It's these hands and this talent Mama passed to me." People started tuning in. First 10, then 100. Someone reposted. The story started to go viral. Comments poured in like a waterfall. "Stay strong. What a horror. Where is this scumbag?" By lunch, thousands were watching. People started sending donations for food, for a heater, for a lawyer. Thaddeus called her. "Are you out of your mind? You're provoking him." "I'm making him famous," she answered. "Now not only the police are looking for him, but the whole internet." And it worked. An hour later, a message appeared in the comments. "I saw him an hour ago. Route 66 Motel, mile marker 50, red Toyota, plates covered in mud. He was buying gas in a canister at the station nearby." Zainab passed the info to Thaddeus. He sent people, but Kyrie was already gone from the motel. The clerk said the guest acted weird, twitchy, constantly looking at his phone, and then saw Zainab's stream. Someone on staff was watching it at the front desk. "He turned white," the clerk said. "Saw her showing the apartment and people writing support. He hissed something like, 'She's using this for PR too,' grabbed the gas can and drove off." "Where?" Thaddeus asked over the phone. "Toward the city." Zainab sat by the sewing machine, reading comments. She felt warm, not from the radiators, but from human support. She felt strong. Suddenly the doorbell rang. She flinched. "Who is it? Police? Thaddeus?" She walked to the peephole. Dark. The light in the hallway wasn't working. Probably burned out or someone unscrewed it. "Who's there?" she asked. Silence. Then a rustle. A strange glugging sound, as if someone was pouring water on the floor. Zainab sniffed. A sharp, acrid smell hit her nose. Gasoline. Her heart stopped. She heard the click of a lighter. "Zainab!" Kyrie's voice from behind the door was drunk and cheerful. "I watched your stream. Cool dress. Too bad it's synthetic. Flashes fast." "Kyrie, don't do this!" she screamed, recoiling from the door. "You wanted fame?" he yelled. "You wanted to burn me in front of the whole world? Well, burn yourself along with your rags and that damn diary." A sharp whoosh. A snake of fire crawled under the door. The old linoleum in the entryway flared instantly. The wooden door, upholstered in faux leather, caught like a torch. Zainab rushed back into the room. The way out was cut off. Fire greedily licked the walls, devouring the wallpaper. Smoke was already filling the hallway in black billows. She grabbed the diary and her phone, ran to the window. 5th floor, concrete and ice below. The door to the room began to char. Kyrie hadn't run. He stood there behind the door laughing. He hadn't come just to scare. He came to finish what he started with her mother. Destroy the witness and the evidence in one strike. Smoke poured from under the door in thick black clouds, instantly filling the entryway. The smell of gasoline was so sharp, Zainab's eyes immediately watered. She coughed, covering her mouth with the sleeve of her strange curtain dress. "Burn, witch!" came Kyrie's drunk, hysterical scream from behind the door, drowned out by the crackle of growing flames. Zainab darted to the door, but immediately recoiled. The metal handle was red hot, and the paint on the frame was bubbling. The way back was cut off. The fire roared like a living creature, eating the old fuel-soaked linoleum. Flames licked the coat rack, and the coats went up like matches. It was becoming impossible to breathe in the apartment. Heat came in waves, mixing with the freezing cold coming from the broken window, but the fire was winning. Zainab grabbed the most valuable things from the table, Mama's diary and the phone. There was nothing else to save. The Singer machine was too heavy. The fabrics had already caught fire. She rushed to the window she had broken herself with a chair minutes ago. She leaned out. 5th floor. Below, a concrete courtyard covered in a crust of ice and dirty snow. Wind hit her face, burning her skin with frost, but behind her was scarier. "Help!" she screamed, leaning over the sill. People were already gathering in the yard. Neighbors ran out of the building in robes and jackets thrown on hastily. Someone pointed a finger at her window. "Jump to the balcony roof!" A guy yelled from below, waving his arms. "4th floor! The balcony is glassed in, but it has a roof!" Zainab looked down. The balcony roof below was narrow, sloped, and icy. One wrong move, and she flies down to the asphalt. In the room behind her, something crashed loudly. Probably the wardrobe fell. Tongues of flame danced on the ceiling, creeping toward the chandelier. Breathing became impossible. Zainab realized, either she crashes or she burns alive. She swung a leg over the sill. A sharp shard of glass sticking out of the frame slashed her calf, but she didn't even feel the pain. Adrenaline drowned everything out. She stood on the outer ledge, clutching the brickwork with white knuckles. The wind tore at the hem of her long velvet dress, trying to throw her down. She took a breath, squeezed her eyes shut, and let go, sliding down. The impact was hard. She landed on the tin roof of the 4th floor balcony. Her legs slid on the ice. She fell on her side, hitting her hip painfully, and rolled toward the edge. Her fingers frantically scratched the smooth metal, trying to find any grip. At the last moment, when her legs were already dangling in the void, her hand hit the metal bar of the railing. She gripped it with a death grip. Sirens wailed in the distance. Into the yard, crushing snowbanks and pushing parked cars aside, flew a red fire truck. "Ladder fast!" commanded a voice on a megaphone. Zainab hung by one arm, watching columns of black smoke and sparks erupt from her window overhead. It felt like an eternity passed before the strong arms of a fireman in turnout gear grabbed her and pulled her into the bucket of the ladder truck. As soon as her feet touched solid ground, medics ran to her. They threw a thermal blanket over her, started asking something, measuring pressure, but Zainab didn't hear them. She stared at the entrance. 2 police officers were dragging someone to a patrol car. It was Kyrie. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He looked absolutely insane. His face was smeared with soot, jacket unzipped. Despite the freeze, he was laughing, throwing his head back, and that laugh was scarier than the fire itself. "Burn, baby, burn!" he yelled, spitting saliva. "So it doesn't go out. No apartment, no evidence, no diary, no jail. I solved everything. I'm a genius." A cop pressed his head down hard, shoving him into the back seat. "That's my wife up there," Kyrie continued to squeal as the door slammed. "I warmed her up. She was cold without heat. I'm a good husband." Zainab met his eyes through the glass. There was not a drop of remorse in them, only the wild animal thrill of destruction. He saw her, alive, wrapped in a foil blanket. His face twisted into a grimace of disappointment and hatred. He started thrashing in the car, trying to kick the window out until the cops calmed him down with a baton. Thaddeus arrived in 20 minutes. He found Zainab in the ambulance. She sat clutching the saved diary, smelling of smoke. "How are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I'm okay," she said quietly. "But him, he's a finished man." "He's arrested," Thaddeus said harshly. "Attempted murder, arson, destruction of property. He won't wiggle out of this." But they underestimated Kyrie, or rather, his ability to survive at someone else's expense. 3 days passed. Zainab lived in a small apartment downtown that Thaddeus temporarily rented for her. She refused to go to his mansion, wanting to keep some independence, but agreed to security at the door. The news Thaddeus brought was discouraging. "He got a lawyer," the uncle said, tossing a folder of documents on the table. "And not just a public defender. He's being defended by Reginald Sterling, the most expensive and unscrupulous lawyer in the state." "How?" Zainab was surprised. "Kyrie has no money. I blocked all accounts, and what he stole, he spent on Lachey and debts." "That's the thing." Thaddeus rubbed the bridge of his nose. "He found money. A lot of money. Sterling doesn't take cases without a giant retainer." "But where?" "From his mother." Zainab froze with a cup of tea in her hand. "From Ms. Bernice?" "But she complained she was a poor pensioner." "She lied. She had savings, old reserves, gold, antiques, family jewelry she hid in a bank box and at home in stashes. Kyrie, before driving over to burn your apartment, stopped by her place." Thaddeus opened the folder and showed the police report. He drugged his mother with tea laced with sleeping pills. While she slept, he cleaned everything out, cracked the safe, took the keys to the deposit box, took everything, and immediately pawned it, giving the money to the lawyer. He robbed his own mother. Zainab couldn't believe such a level of baseness. And now, this strategy works. The lawyer already filed a motion. They aren't denying the arson. They are claiming insanity. Thaddeus turned on the tablet. A recording of the lawyer's press conference played. A slick man in an expensive suit spoke into microphones. "My client, Kyrie Payton, is a victim of circumstances. Prolonged stress, financial collapse, death of a beloved mother-in-law, betrayal of a wife who left for a rich relative. His psyche couldn't take it. It was a nervous breakdown, a state of temporary insanity. He didn't understand what he was doing. He isn't a criminal. He is a sick man who needs help, not prison. We will demand involuntary commitment to a clinic." Zainab clenched her fists. "Clinic! In 6 months, he'll walk out with a certificate that he's healthy and roam free." "Exactly," Thaddeus nodded. "And the scariest part is they have a chance. Expertise can be bought, and Sterling knows how to deal with judges. We need ironclad proof that he planned the crime in advance, that he is cold-blooded and calculating. Mama's diary isn't enough. The lawyer will say it's the ramblings of a sick woman. Lachey's testimony isn't enough either. She's an interested party, a scorned mistress." The doorbell rang. Thaddeus's guard peeked into the room. "Ms. Griggs Payton, you have a visitor. A woman. Says she's your mother-in-law." Zainab and Thaddeus exchanged glances. "Let her in," Zainab said. Ms. Bernice walked into the room, and Zainab didn't recognize her. This wasn't the haughty lady who taught her how to cook greens, nor even the scared woman Zainab spoke to a couple of days ago. Before her stood a destitute old woman. She was dressed in an old worn coat, under which a nightgown was visible. On her feet were worn-down boots. Her face was gray, swollen from tears, hair disheveled. She stopped in the middle of the room, not daring to look up. "Zainab," she croaked. "Why did you come?" Zainab asked, not getting up from the chair. Ms. Bernice suddenly collapsed to her knees, right on the floor, banging her knees against the parquet. "Save me!" she wailed. "Save me for the love of God! He took everything, everything!" She crawled toward Zainab, reaching out, shaking hands. "I woke up, and the house was empty. Safe open, jewelry box gone. He even took the wedding ring off my finger while I slept. I went to the bank. Box empty. He left me naked. I have nothing to buy bread with. The marshals sealed the apartment for his debts. I was a co-signer. I was thrown onto the street." Zainab looked at her with disgust and pity. "You came to ask for money?" "I came to ask for forgiveness," sobbed the mother-in-law, grabbing the hem of Zainab's dress. "I was a fool. I thought he loved me. I protected him. I lived for him, and he stepped over me like trash. Zainab, he is a monster." "I know," Zainab answered coldly. "I told you that, but you chose his side. You gave him an alibi. You lied to the police." "I'll fix everything," Ms. Bernice screamed. "I'll tell everything. I'll go to court. I'll say he isn't crazy. He planned it all. He discussed with me how best to frame you. He laughed when he poisoned your mother. He is normal, Zainab. He's just a devil. I'll testify. I'll drown him. Just don't abandon me. Give me a corner. Give me even a penny. I'll die on the street." Thaddeus, standing by the window, chuckled. "A prosecution witness who sells her own son for a bowl of soup. That is a valuable asset." Zainab was silent. She looked at the woman who turned 10 years of her life into hell, who called her barren, even though she knew the problem was her son, who came to their house and rearranged things, demonstrating power. Now this power lay at her feet, smearing mascara on her cheeks. "Fine," Zainab said. "I will help you. I won't let you starve to death." Ms. Bernice raised her head, and a greedy spark flashed in her eyes. "Thank you. Thank you, daughter. I knew you were kind. You aren't like him. How much will you give me? I need to rent a small apartment, and for food, and a new coat." "I will give you a future," Zainab interrupted her, "but I have conditions." "Anything. I'll sign any papers." "Papers later. First, repentance." Zainab stood up and walked to her mother-in-law. "We are going to the cemetery to Mama right now. Mr. Vance will bring a camera. You will stand before her grave and apologize. You will tell everything, how you knew about the pills, how you helped your son hide evidence, how you hated us. You will say it not to me, but to her, the dead one." Ms. Bernice started shaking. "On camera? But everyone will see." "My friends, neighbors—" "You have no more friends and neighbors," Zainab said harshly. "You only have a choice. Either you do this, and I ensure your life, or you walk out into the cold right now, and I won't lift a finger when you freeze in an alley." "I agree," whispered the old woman, lowering her head. The drive to the cemetery passed in silence. Ms. Bernice huddled in the corner of the leather car interior, teeth chattering. Zainab looked out the window at the gray city. There was no gloating in her, only a cold necessity to finish the job. At the cemetery, it was windy. Etta Griggs's fresh grave mound was dusted with snow. The wooden cross stood crooked. The earth had settled. Thaddeus turned on the camera on his phone. "Get on your knees," Zainab ordered. Ms. Bernice plopped into the snow. She didn't care. She was cold and scared. "Speak to Etta Griggs." "Etta," whined the old woman, looking at the photo on the cross. "Forgive me, wretch that I am. I am guilty before you. I knew Kyrie wanted to drive you from this world. He told me, 'Ma, gotta remove the old lady. Land is expensive.' And I stayed silent. I thought money is more needed for us." Zainab stood over her like a judge. Louder. About the pills. I knew about the pills, shouted Ms. Bernice, choking on tears. He came to me, bragged, said, Uncle Elroy gave me poison. Tomorrow it all ends. I didn't stop him. I was even glad. Lord, forgive me. I raised a monster. He is sane. He understood everything. He is a calculating snake. Put him away. Put him away for life. She banged her forehead on the frozen ground, dumping all the dirt she had hoarded for years. It was a perfect recording, a confession of an accomplice that destroyed any defense line about affect. With these words, Kyrie would go to a maximum security prison for 25 years, not a sanitarium. When she finished, Thaddeus turned off the recording. Enough, he said. Ms. Bernice rose with difficulty, brushing off her wet knees. She looked at Zainab with an ingratiating, pitiful smile. Well there, I did everything, Zainab, honey. Unburdened my soul. Now let's go to the warmth. You talked about money. I need about $5,000 to start, for first and last. Zainab silently opened her purse. The mother-in-law's eyes lit up with greedy fire. She already imagined buying food, renting a hotel room, maybe even buying her earrings back from the pawn shop. Zainab pulled out a white envelope. Ms. Bernice snatched it with trembling hands. It was thin, too thin for a stack of cash. A check? She asked hopefully. You wrote a check. She tore the envelope open. Inside lay a bus ticket. Ms. Bernice froze. She brought the paper to her eyes, squinting. Bus terminal, Tupelo, Mississippi. She read slowly. Departure today at 6:00 p.m. exactly. She looked up at Zainab. What is this? This is your future, Ms. Bernice, Zainab answered calmly. Like I promised, I won't let you die on the street. In Tupelo, that's a long ride from here, stands my great-grandmother's old house. It's been empty for 5 years, but the walls are sturdy. There's a stove, wood in the shed, a well in the yard. The country? Whispered the mother-in-law, pale. Middle of nowhere? Without amenities? A roof over your head? And the money? She shrieked. You promised to provide for me. I provided you housing. Zainab's voice was hard as steel. I didn't promise you money, not a cent. You didn't earn it. You drank my blood for years. You helped kill my mother. You betrayed me. You betrayed even your son when he stopped being profitable to you. I won't go. Ms. Bernice threw the ticket into the snow. I won't survive there. I am a city woman. Give me money. You are obligated. You're rich now. Pick up the ticket, Zainab said. It's your only chance. The bus leaves in 2 hours. You witch! Yelled the old woman, rushing at her with fists. You tricked me. Thaddeus intercepted her arm, not letting her touch Zainab. Quiet, citizen, he said. You have a choice. Either you take the ticket and go atone for your sins in the sticks, or I hand this recording to the district attorney right now, and you go down as an accomplice in premeditated murder. That's 8 to 20 years. In prison, believe me, conditions are worse than in a village with a stove. Miss Bernice went limp. She realized the trap had snapped shut. She had talked herself into a sentence, and now her freedom depended only on the mercy of this woman she so despised. She slowly, sobbing, sank into the snow and picked up the ticket. Damn you, she hissed, looking up at Zainab. Bus station is that way. Zainab pointed to the cemetery gates. Walk, it's good for your health. She turned and walked to the car. The wind blew the hem of her coat. She felt no pity, only huge relief. The last thread connecting her to the past was cut. To court, she told Thaddeus, getting in the car. Now we have everything to destroy Kyrie. The car pulled away, leaving the lonely figure of the old woman in the middle of the cemetery alley. Snow began to fall harder, covering the tracks. 6 months passed. The courthouse was surrounded by journalists. This case became the loudest trial of the year in the city, the case of the Black Widower, as the papers dubbed it. Zainab stepped out of Thaddeus Vance's car. Camera flashes blinded her, but she didn't even blink. She wore a deep burgundy pantsuit sewn from her own sketch. Perfect cut, rigid shoulder lines, high collar. She no longer looked like a victim. She looked like a queen walking to a coronation. The courtroom was packed. When Kyrie was brought in, a whisper went through the rows. He had deteriorated badly over these months in county jail. Gaunt, lost weight, black circles under his eyes. His expensive suit hung on him like a sack. He scanned the room with a hunted look, seeking support, but saw only cold faces. Lachey wasn't there. She left town the day after the scandal, realizing there would be no money. His mother wasn't there either. She was sitting in a remote village without phone service. Zainab stood at the witness stand. "Ms. Griggs-Peyton, tell the court what happened," the prosecutor asked. She spoke for an hour and a half. Her voice was even, calm, without hysterics or tears. Every word drove a nail into Kyrie's defense. She presented Mama's diary, red lines written with a trembling hand about switched pills. She laid out bank statements showing transfers to Lachey's accounts and loans taken under a fraudulent power of attorney. She showed the video of the fire, where Kyrie laughs in front of the burning door, and finally, the main ace was played, the video from the cemetery, Ms. Bernice's confession. Dead silence hung in the room when the words of the defendant's mother sounded from the screen. "He is sane. He is a calculating snake. He planned the murder." Kyrie in the cage covered his face with his hands. His lawyer, Reginald Sterling, sat with a stone face, realizing the fee hadn't been earned. The version about temporary insanity crumbled to dust. "Defendant, do you have anything to say?" the judge asked. Kyrie raised his head. Tears of malice stood in his eyes. "It's all her!" he shouted, pointing a finger at Zainab. "She set it all up. She's a witch. She turned my mother against me. She stole my life." The judge banged the gavel. "Sentence will be pronounced now." 25 years. Maximum security, with full confiscation of property to pay debts and restitution to victims. When the bailiffs led Kyrie out, he tried to spit in Zainab's direction, but missed. His spit landed on a guard's boot, for which he immediately got a jab in the ribs. Zainab watched this without emotion. She felt no joy, only fatigue and the understanding that the page was turned. After the trial, Thaddeus invited her to a restaurant. "Zainab, I'm proud of you," he said, raising a glass. "You went through hell and came out a winner. I have a proposal for you. I want you to become the creative director at my holding company. We have a textile division, but it's dying. I need a person with your taste and character. Name your salary." Zainab smiled. 6 months ago, she would have fainted at such an offer. But now— "Thank you, Uncle Thaddeus, but I decline." "Why?" He was surprised. "I don't want to work for anyone, even you. I want to build my own." "And what will you do?" "I will restore the apartment, the one Kyrie burned, and open my atelier there. I'll call it Etta, in honor of Mama." Thaddeus looked at her with respect. "Good. The money from the land sale for the highway is already in your account. That's your startup capital. Go for it." Another month passed. Renovations in the burned apartment went around the clock. Zainab chose the paint herself, drew the layout herself. The smell of burning vanished, replaced by the smell of fresh wood and varnish. But one unfinished business remained. On the day of the atelier opening, Zainab got in her car and drove not downtown, but out of the city, to State Correctional Facility Number 5. The visitation room smelled of bleach and tobacco. Kyrie was brought in 10 minutes later. He was shaved bald, in a gray jumpsuit with a tag on his chest. He sat opposite through the glass and picked up the phone receiver. "Came to gloat?" he asked hoarsely. "To watch me rot here? Like it?" Zainab looked at him and tried to find in this person the one she loved for 10 years, but found nothing. Before her sat a stranger, an embittered stranger. "No, Kyrie, I came to pay your debts." "Debts?" He smirked crookedly. "You owe me half a life." Zainab pulled a folder from her bag and pressed it to the glass. "First, divorce decree. We were divorced automatically without your consent by court order. You are now a free man. Legally." Kyrie spit on the floor. "Second," Zainab pulled out another sheet. It was a bill. A regular restaurant bill, handwritten on letterhead with the logo Etta. What is this? Kyrie squinted. Remember that dinner 6 months ago when you forced me to cook duck and serve your boss on the day my mother died? Kyrie's eyes widened. Are you serious? Absolutely. I calculated everything. Groceries, room rental, and most importantly, waitress and chef services. At double rate for working on a day of mourning, plus emotional damages. Total, $800. She slid the paper through the slot under the glass. I deducted this amount from the money left from the sale of your car at the marshal's auction. So we are even. Kyrie stared at the paper and his face started turning red. You're sick, he screamed, banging his fist on the glass. You're crazy. $800 for dinner? I'll kill you. Time's up. Prisoner, barked the guard, grabbing him by the shoulder. Kyrie struggled, continuing to shout curses, but Zainab had already hung up the phone. She stood, adjusted the flawless collar of her coat, and turned to the exit. Hey, 142, shouted the guard at Kyrie. Hands behind your back. Move to the cell. He no longer had a name. Zainab walked out to the street. The sun blinded her eyes. She got in the car and drove back to the city. At the entrance to the former apartment building, now turned into a stylish entrance with the sign Etta, bespoke fashion, a line stood. Women of different ages, seeing her car, began to whisper, That's her, the owner. They say she sews dresses that change destiny. I saw her stream. She's such a strong woman. Zainab got out of the car. She smiled, not with that timid smile she used to try to please her husband, but with the smile of a winner. She cut the red ribbon. Welcome, she said. We are open. She walked inside into her new world where there was no place for fear, humiliation, and people who don't know how to love. Kyrie remained in the past, wiped away like a stain of dirt from the hem of a royal dress, and ahead was life, her own. Well, friends, that's the story. Heavy, right? But I think very instructive. You know, while reading, I kept thinking, did Zainab do the right thing? On one hand, it's harsh, sending the mother-in-law to a remote village, putting the husband away for 25 years, and even handing him a bill at the end. Some might say revenge. Others might say justice. Because think about it, they didn't just hurt her. They tried to destroy her. Morally, financially, even physically. Kyrie killed her mother, torched the house. The mother-in-law covered for a killer for money. Can such things be forgiven? Can you turn the other cheek when you're stabbed in the back? I think Zainab did what she had to. She didn't take revenge in a dirty way. She simply allowed the law and karma to do their work. She protected herself and her mother's memory. And most importantly, she didn't break. She turned her pain into power, into creativity. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.